Hi, Year 3. Welcome back. This is going to be our last lesson today for this week, and it's all about using measures in real life. So in this case, it's actually word problems. Now, I've taken the word problems from your packet and slightly adjusted them with different numbers. So I'm going to show you how I would solve it with my numbers, and you'll see pretty much the same steps that you need to take for your numbers and your problems, but obviously you'll be using different numbers. So let's look at this first of all, and I'm actually going to highlight the important information when we're reading, because remember we talked about this with word problems. Sometimes it's good just to highlight what's important and even read it without our numbers. So let's see. You need to make the squash for your party. To make 1 cup of squash, you need something millimeters of juice and something of water. So we know that we need juice and we need water. Remember, I'll do my numbers when we come back. Let's just figure out what we need to do first. Mr. Slade needs to buy the juice and the water. There are no taps on the beach. So you need to work out how much juice and water he needs to get. Okay, so I know that he needs to get juice and water to make squash. Perfect. There will be 8 people at the picnic. Oh, that's probably going to be important. 8 people. And everybody needs 1 cup of juice. How much juice and how much water will Mr. Slade need to buy? So that is step 1. Now I'm going to read it back with our numbers here. So to make 1 cup of squash, you need 15 milliliters of juice and 100 of water. And those are the only numbers. We had our 8 already in our cup of juice. So everyone needs 1 cup of juice. Let's take a look at this. We'll read question 2 and 3 afterwards. So this is what it's asking you. Well, he will need to buy, and it's asking you for the total amount. But let's take a look at this step by step, starting with the juice. So we know that you need 15 milliliters of juice. You also need 100 milliliters of water to make 1 cup. So this plus this, in a way, is equal to 1 cup of juice. We know this. Pretend that that's A plus B, and it equals this 1 cup of the squash. There we go. Now, what else did we know? Well, it's very important. Everyone needs 1 cup of juice, and we have 8 people. So we need to times this by 8. So we get a total of 8 cups of squash. Now we need to figure out, so how do we do that? Well, let's start here because I'm here. 8 times 100. Well, you can count up in hundreds. So 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, 800. That's 800. He'll need 800 milliliters of water. Remember, let's put our units of measurement as well. Then we'll need to do the same thing to 8 times 15. Now, this might be a bit trickier. So what you can do is, rather than using your times tables, is use your repeated addition. You can see here I've done my repeated addition. So I've written 15 8 times. So 15 plus 15 plus 15 plus 15 plus 15 plus 15 plus 15, etc. Now, again, this might be a bit trickier, but use your double stacks here. What do you know? 15 plus 15 is equal to what? Exactly, it's equal to 30. So let's circle our pairs now. Now you can see that we have 4 30s. So 30 plus 30 plus 30 plus 30, because we had 15 plus 15. All right? Now, again, you could use your times tables here. You could use your 3 times tables to help you, because we have 4 lots of 30. So think about as well, what's 4 times 3, and then times that by 10, because we have 3 times 10 to make our 30. But let's also continue using our doubles. So this time I'm going to circle my pair of 30s. So we know that 30 plus 30 is equal to 60. Now I have 60 plus 60. And again, here you can use your double facts. Think about what is, look at your ones, 0 plus 0 in your ones. So I'm gonna have 0 ones. Now look at your tens, 6 plus 6. Well, I know that that's 12. So I'm gonna actually have 120 altogether in my place value, all right? So I know that he needs 120 milliliters of juice. And now I'm going to stick these answers up here. So Mr. Slades needs to buy how much water? 800 milliliters of water. Do not forget to put your units of measurement. And 120 milliliters of juice. Now, this, of course, will not be the answer for your work because you have different numbers here, but you'll have to do the same procedure. So times those numbers by 8. Again, you can either use your times tables, or if you need to use repeated addition and then find those pairs to help you, that's fine. Now, let's look at problem number 2. So Mr. Slade likes to be prepared, so he wants everyone to be able to have 4 times as much juice. In this case, even though it says juice, we can tell here that it's really squash. So if we change that to squash to help ease confusion, look back, so how much juice was there? Well, there was 120. So we're going to do 4 times 120. That was our juice. And then we're also going to do 4 times, can you remember how much water we needed? Well done, 800 milliliters. So let's have a look. All right, 4 times 120. Well, again, you can use, let's actually use our 4 times tables here. So 4 times 0, I'm just doing the ones first. 4 times 0 is going to be 0 ones. 4 times 2 in my tens, 4 times 2 or 4 times 20 in this case is going to be 80. So I have 8 tens. And then let's look at our hundreds. There's 100. So 4 times 100 is going to be 4. So we know that in terms of juice, he needs to buy 480 milliliters. I'm going to stick that up there already. Let's do the same thing from the water. So again, let's look at our ones. 4 times 0, that's going to be 0 ones. Look at our tens, 0 tens. 4 times 0 tens, it's going to be 0 tens. Now our hundreds, 4 times 8. Ooh, can you remember what 4 times 8 is? If you're not sure, think about what is 8 times 2. Exactly, it's 16. And now think about what's 16 plus 16. Perfect, 32. So that's a good way to get there if you're not too sure yet on what 4 times 8 is. So 32. Now obviously 32 can't fit in my hundreds because that goes above. So it's going to be 3,000. My 3 is going to go in the thousands and my 200. So 3,200 milliliters. Now, if you remember from our last lesson, we can convert that because we've gone past our thousands. So this could be 3 liters and how many milliliters? 200 milliliters. Let's put that up there. So 3 liters and 200 milliliters. That'll be easier for Mr. Slade to remember because I think some of those waters come in liter bottles. So he can buy 3 liters, he could buy 4 liters and just not use the 4th one as much. All right, let's take a look at question number 3 now. I have my highlighter ready. Mr. Slade has said that each person, remember they are 8, I'm going to highlight 8 as well, can have something bag of pick and mix sweets, all right? But everyone has different favorites, okay? Someone has got to go to the sweet shop and weigh out the sweets. 1/4, oh, I already am going to highlight this. 1/4 of the sweets need to be gobstoppers, okay? And actually, I'm glad that I have this here so I can remind myself. This needs to be 1/4 is gobstoppers. 1/4 of the sweets needs to be pineapple cubes. Another 1/4 is pineapple cubes. And 1/2 needs to be toffees. So 1/2 I'm going to put up here as well to help me remember. I'm going to highlight those as well really quickly. How many grams should they buy of Gobstoppers, pineapple cubes, and toffees? So a few different steps here. Now let's look again. I read that without saying how many grams he had. So in my problem, he has each person can have 200 bag of pick and mix sweets. So let's start. I'm going to color code these to make it a bit easier. I'm going to put magenta for toffees. That's 1/2. I'm going to put blue for Gobstoppers. That's 1/4. And I'll leave yellow as my pineapple because they are yellow. Like I said, let's start with our toffee. So we know that we need to find 1/2 of 200 grams. Remember our WDD, whole divided by denominator. So 200 divided by 2. All right, how many times can 2 go into 200? Also, what do you notice? Well, I notice that this is the same. My hundreds is the same as my 2 here. And I know that means there's 200. So 200 divided by 2 is 100. And I can check that with inverse. 200s, 100 plus 100 is 200. So that's good. My whole divided by denominator, 100. Now I'm going to multiply that by my numerator, which is 1. So 100 times 1 is equal to 100. Ooh, it's not the best 100. So we know that he needs 100 grams of toffees. Now, this is for one person. I'm going to look at 8 people later, but I've just put 1 for now, all right? So that pineapples is 1/4 of 200. Again, I'm going to use my WDD. So 200. What am I going to divide by this time if I want to find 1/4? WDD, so 200 divided by 4. Perfect. Now, let's look. My hundreds, oh, well, that doesn't go in. How about, let's look at our 10, so that's 20. Does 4 fit into 20? Yes, I know that 4 times 5, I know I'm going to have 5 in my 10s, and then still 0 ones. So 50, and I can check that. 50 plus 50, that's 2 50s, that's 100. Add another 50, that's 150, 200. If I'm counting in 50s, 50, 100, 150, 200. Perfect. And then, so WDD, perfect, MN, 50 times my numerator, multiply by numerator, 50 times 1 is equal to 50. So Mr. Slade, for one person, he would need to get 50 grams of pineapple cubes. Right, last but not least, let's take a look at Gobstoppers. Now, again, Gobstoppers, he needs 1/4 of those. So it's going to be very similar, actually, because we've already found 1/4 of 200 with the pineapple cubes. So actually, I don't really need to show my working out because we've already done it down here. It's going to be the same thing because it's still 1/4. So we know that that's also going to be 50 grams. For one person would need 50 grams of Gobstoppers. All right, now remember, this is just for one person. So one person would get 50 grams of Gobstopper, one person would get 50 grams of pineapple, and one person would get 100 grams of toffee. And again, remember my number, my answer is going to be different because I'm using 200 grams and yours is slightly different. What is the next step that we need to do? Well, we need to times our answers here. What are we going to times it by? 2? No. 5? No. 8? Exactly, because remember there are 8 people. So let's start with 8 times 50. Now, I can count up in 50s for this. So let's do it. I have my 8 fingers up. So 50, 100, 150, 200, 250, 300, 350, 400. So we know that 8 times 50 is going to be 400 grams. So he will need 400 grams of gobstoppers. And it's the same thing for here, for the pineapple cubes. It's still going to be 400 because we have 8 times 50 grams again. So I'm going to write 400 grams as well over here. Now, as well, for our toffees, again, we need to multiply 8 by 8 because there are 8 people, 8 hundreds. So you can count up in hundreds if you like, but you should also realize, well, 8 hundreds is 800. You can check that if you want counting up in hundreds. You can look at your 8 times 0 ones is going to be 0, 8 times 10, 0 tens is going to be 0 tens, and 8 times 100s is going to be 800s, 8 in the hundreds. So there we go. So our answer is that he needs 400 grams of gobstoppers, 400 grams of pineapple cubes, and 800 grams of toffees to get all of these snacks for everyone. Now remember, you are going to have a different number here. You have quarters in a half. Again, I would start with a half because sometimes that's a bit easier, and then do your quarters. And probably for A and B, actually definitely you're going to have the same answer. So you only need to show you're working out for one of those. That is it. Remember, you have different numbers than I do for your word problems, but the steps are still the same. Number 1, you can solve it, times it by 8, either repeated addition or using 8 times tables or your connections. Here, then you need to times it. So obviously I've times it by 4. You might have to times it by something else. If it's twice as much, you need to times it by 2, 3 times as much by 3, 5 times as much by 5, etc. All right? Remember, if it goes above, so we had 3,200 milliliters, so I converted that to 3 liters because we know that 1,000 milliliters is equal to a liter. So you can put that in your mixed units there. And lastly, remember, I would first find your quarters and your half of this number and then times it by 8 at the end. That makes it a little bit easier. Okay, so enjoy that. Use this video, pause the video if you need to, but just remember, do remember that my numbers are different, so you're going to have different answers than I will. Yeah. Enjoy and talk to you later next week. Bye-bye.